Welcome to another edition of Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor. And here's another one that's not a native Hoosier, but he's certainly a great neighbor. Jim Lilly, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you know, normally we do these things in chronological order, and we will do that eventually, but I want to talk about something that's very recent that as a pastor, I'm guessing you never prophesized that you'd ever be the cross-country coach at a high school. Is that fair to say?
No, that is more than fair to say. I still sometimes catch myself like, is this real? But yeah, it was an opportunity that at first I thought I'm just too busy. And you know, I really thought about it, and I enjoy cross-country and love being around the young people.
Which nobody's ever said except cross-country runners, by the way.
Yes, and I love being around the young people. And I last Tuesday, I believe it was, Corey Julian had a meeting for all the coaches, and he talked to me about privately because I'm new, and he was wondering how things are going. And I shared with him, and I really mean it, I think they chose the 12 best kids in Lagodi to send out our cross country. They are, now I'm not saying they're the 12 best runners, I didn't say that, but the best young teenagers. They've been great. They've been great.
So how did that come out? How did that come about? I mean, I know Lagodi High School needed a cross country. We have one cross country team, boys and girls.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, they do.
How did your name get thrown in the hat?
Well, I'm kind of trying to figure that out myself. Okay. And like my daughter's an employee, and Jamie, she graduated with Sarah, and I think it was one of those like, let's go with this name, and so they did approach me, and I have to admit at first, I was like, hey, I'm just too busy, but it really bothered me that I'd said no. And usually when I say I'm too busy, I forget it and go on to the next subject. And because, like I say, I love cross country. And so maybe a day, 2 days later, Corey Julian reached out to me, and I said, I've thought about it, and I said, I'd like to do it. And so that's where I'm at. And it's been pretty exciting so far.
You know, like me, people don't see you and I running around the streets of Lagodi too much. No. But I understand from you did run a little cross country in school, right? I did. And I do run, but it's out at bogs. Nobody can see me because I'm much slower. But yeah, that was an opportunity I had, back in the 70s to run cross country. And we, for the most part, as you imagine, had legitimate cross-country tracks, the trails. Oh, boy, West Virginia.
Yeah, from West Virginia, and we had the cross-country, they'd have a little area where you cross the creek, and it was a lot of fun. It was a personal challenge, obviously, but, we got on the van, traveled all over the state, became friends, and I did a few sports when I was in high school. The only one that I can still do today is run. So it's a life skill that they can take for a long time. Yeah,
well, that's amazing. So as we sit here on a Tuesday afternoon, your first cross-country meet is less than a week away. I just saw it on our the big board up there. It's Monday at North Knox, right?
North Knox. Mm-hmm. And yes, I'm anxiously awaiting. We're trying to get there. I got hired right before the state said, okay, leave them alone for 2 weeks, right? So that's where I'm coming in. So we've not practiced a long time, but physically they have 10 regular season meets. Okay, so now you're in 30-some miles of competition plus the postseason. So you got to get them there as quickly, but as comfortably as can. And so I'm looking forward to Monday. I hope we do well, but people don't judge us by Monday. I think you give us a couple more weeks, they're going to be in condition, ready to run.
Well, kudos to you for stepping up. Otherwise, who knows, right? I mean, we may not have a team, but regardless, kudos and good luck to you on Monday, and good luck with the season.
Thank you.
Cross-country coach, Jim Lilly. Man of many hats, no question about it. We're in his church, as a matter of fact, Faith Baptist Church, where he's the pastor. Believe it or not, this is actually the third church that I've done one of these in.
LV.
Yeah, Christy Farhar over at the River.
Yes,
Shoals.
the River.
Farrell Armstrong wanted it to be done at the Lagodi United Methodist Church, where she has strong ties.
Yes.
And here. And I think it's always such a neat setting. And I try to do it to where it's comfortable for the individual. And this is probably a true second home for you, isn't it?
It truly is. Yeah. It truly is. This has been an amazing journey. They've been gracious people, and the community has been very welcoming, and so I've enjoyed it. I really have.
Well, as far as the journey is concerned, we'll get to that, how you got here from those hills of West Virginia. But let's go back and tell me a little bit about your parents.
Okay, well, my father and mother, they are, obviously native West Virginians, but their journey too has taken a turn. My father had a stroke maybe 20 months ago. He needed someone to help him, and so he either had to come to Indiana or North Carolina, and obviously my mother was involved then, and they chose North Carolina because of the weather, which probably knows can fault them because of the winters. But in December, we lost Mom, and she pancreatic cancer. And then my father, believe it or not, he's in Indiana now. He's in Parkview. Well, at this moment, he's in Davis Community Hospital. Oh. We'll get to that one. Okay. He broke his hip, but Dad is here, and one thing about me being here, but now my dad is, right?
Yeah. So, what's your mom and dad's name?
James and Loretta. They have an amazing story. Married as my mother was in her late teens, my father just 20, and they had me early. And so, those stories, for the most part, they don't work out. But for those, it was 63 years
63
together.
Years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, James, get better. Good luck. Speedy recovery to you. He'll probably never watch this, will he?
Yeah, he will. He's already asked about me. He said, I don't get Facebook. I said, we'll take care of it.
It'll be on YouTube, James. Just it'll be there forever. Yeah. As a matter of fact. And in fact, you mentioned they have a great story. And I hope that they've shared a lot of it with you and your family, because that's hopefully what we're doing a little bit today.
Yes.
So that your grands and future grands can look at this and say, that's my grandpa.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so what kind of a guy were you growing up in West Virginia? Unruly, I'd assume?
Put it this way. I was known as Jimmy back there, right? And
Jimmy Lilly, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. But Jimmy, he wasn't the best of persons. So, nothing... Didn't purposely try to stay out of issues either. And the move to Indiana, there's no question, it was the best thing. I didn't know it at the time, obviously, but it was the best thing ever happened in my life. It just changed.
But you were an adult when you moved to Indiana, right?
Yeah. I was. And we got to go a step further, believe it or not. My genesis began in an urban area. My parents at the time, they were West Virginians, but Dad couldn't find work, so I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. I actually was in a urban school. I was a first grader the day Martin Luther King got shot. And so we were there in the background. Now, I didn't physically see this, but on the news, the city of Cleveland was like most cities that day. And so that was there. Third grade, Dad, brought the family back to West Virginia. So third grade through 23 years old was West Virginia. So West Virginia's home. West Virginia's home.
So when your dad went back home, what did he do for a living?
Well, my father, in Ohio, he was working on a truck dock, loading trucks. But then he went back to West Virginia, did some truck driving earlier, but then ended up being a coal miner for 31 years.
Coal miner.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's paid the physical price for it, but he really worked hard.
Did your mom work outside the home?
Yeah, my mother was a cosmetologist. She had her own shop. You probably remember the old Coke machines? You slid the bottle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, dropped the cork. Well, Mom had one of those. And so after school, when I didn't have sports, I'd go over. Of course, I'd get I think it was 15 cents. I get 50 cents out of her cash register, drop it in there. And but Mom had, I think, 5 people working at her. She had a big shop.
Oh, okay.
And but but she worked very hard too. Yeah, they were hard workers.
What town in West Virginia did you grow up?
I grew up in Beckley, West Virginia.
You were in Beckley?
Yeah.
Okay, I've been through there a few times.
Yeah.
That seems to be a popular stop on the way to places because it's what, 5-6 hours?
Yes. Yeah, I can get, on a good day, you can get to Beckley 6.5 hours. You're correct.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Get on 64 and go, right?
Yeah. So what kind of place did you live? What was your home place like?
Okay. Well, we were pretty rural, and I lived on what was known as Maxwell Hill, which was just basically sort of like saying, one of these communities outside of Lagodi here. Beckley was spread out. You would probably for Lagodi it would be considered large, but it's not large considered like in Evansville, Bloomington. But it was spread out. Matter of fact,
it's got a Cracker Barrel, I'll tell you that much.
Yes, they have Cracker Barrel. They didn't have it when I was there, but they have quite a bit. Beckley is, matter of fact, Woodrow Wilson, where I graduated. Now it's not that large now, but my graduating class was just a little bit under 600 people. Ooh. Yeah, I know it was, but it wasn't. Because Beckley's big, the bark we hear all the time about consolidation and busing. Well, in West Virginia, the whole state's less than 2 million people, so that's just a reality if the school there survives. So they brought a lot of kids out, but it's not that large now. It's a cycle town. Coal's down, so Beckley's down.
What about siblings? What do you have?
Do what?
Siblings?
Oh, just my brother. My brother Wayne.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
2 boys.
Yeah, he's in North Carolina. Yes, and Wayne, he's in Hickory, North Carolina, where he lives. Okay. Yeah.
What was it? A farm that you lived on in West Virginia?
Well, we did have some acreage. My father, after I graduated high school, my brother was raised on a farm. After I graduated high school, my father. Away from Beckley, if you've ever been to New River Gorge Bridge, and I'm sure you have, you're a traveler.
I have not, but it's...
Have you, Whitewater, I'm sure some people here is Whitewater.
Very familiar with it, yeah.
Well, if you whitewatered New River, you're within 5 miles of, where my father moved. So my brother, much more, but we still look at that as home, but I, myself, was raised in Beckley, yeah.
So as a kid, let's go 12 years old, Jim Lilly. What did you want to be when you grew up?
At 12, I was like any 12-year-old. You wanted all the big things, right? As I believe it or not, I always wanted to. I didn't know exactly what the career was, but I always kind of wanted to be involved with people. And it's kind of in God's providence, He worked that out for me, right? Yeah. I always enjoyed people. And always want to be involved in people, but to say, I don't know. I was employed by the federal government when I came here. I worked for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I was an engineer aide, and basically I took a leave of absence to come out here and help a friend get settled in. And so his name was Brad Turner. He still lives in Washington. I started in Washington, by the way. I did not start in Lagodi. So. And I'm probably getting ahead of your questions.
That's all right. We'll go back.
But the interesting thing is, we came up 150. They gave us directions. And when I came through Lagodi, we both were hungry, and there was a Kentucky Fried Chicken. You know where?
Oh, yeah.
And that's where we stopped.
Yeah.
And we both were just like beating our brains. How do you say the name of this town, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know how you do. How do you know that it's Lagodi?
No,
how do you know that we're pronouncing it right?
No,
right.
It's so funny, but and we kind of, and no offense to anyone listening, but you're kind of like, because we're going to Washington, right? Yeah. And so you're like, okay, we'll never be in this town again. We had no idea that only 15 miles down the road was Washington. There was no GPS then or cell phones, and then to imagine that I live here and resident, my kids go to school here, and it's just kind of ironic.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it, how life turns out? Yeah. So you were not exactly an extroverted child.
No. I always, matter of fact, probably if I had any issues, I didn't do bad on the grades, but remember when they used to give the conduct things?
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, well, always too much talking.
Well, you know what though, for your profession, you
I've thought about
go
that.
back to your teacher and say, just enough. That's just enough talking, right?
That's interesting you say that, because back when I used to help with the radio, I'd think about that sometimes. I would think about those contexts. I was like, oh, I do. That's how I make my living, is talking, man.
So those parent-teacher conferences. Jimmy's a good little guy. He's a hard worker, but he won't shut up. Is that
and my mother, now the disciplinarians in our family, Dad, you cut a break, but Mom, she was the disciplinarian, and she did not like to hear that, and I could hear it over and over and over. Okay, you can do what grade, but you can control how you act in class, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, not always, Mom. I mean, not as a 8 and 9 year old kid or 7 or whatever. That's funny, but I guess there is a time and a place.
Yeah.
and sometimes we speak when it's not our time, right?
Yeah, I was always at the wrong time, unfortunately, I guess, yeah.
So basketball, of course, here in Indiana was huge, is huge. Football, a little bit different. Or West Virginia, a little bit different with football, right? That was king.
Yeah, the high school level, you're correct. The interesting thing is the school I went to did very well in basketball. But I never even considered it, not because I didn't like basketball, but you had to be either tall or a good shot, right? When you got that many kids, and I was neither, obviously. I think overall Beckley has won like 16 state championships. They're very good in basketball. You're right. Friday night, it seemed like it was the thing. It started with my dad coming home from work, taking me as a boy, and everybody. It's just kind of the thing. You ate your hot dogs, popcorn. It's setting out in the fall, and the game was important, but yet the day was more important, right?
Did you play?
I did play. I did play for Woodrow Wilson. Our grade system was a little different. There was 3 junior highs. I'm dating myself on a junior high. 3 junior highs: Beckley Junior High, Stratton Junior High, Park Junior High, that fed Woodrow Wilson, which is Beckley High School. So you went for 3 years, 7th, 8th, and 9th, battling these kids and not liking them and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, you come in 10th grade, and now they're your teammates. It was just a little awkward, but you got over it very quickly. Yeah. And but that was always interesting. But I did. Yeah, I played, and the cross country lead in. And boy, I'm gonna get myself in trouble when I say this, especially in our culture. There wasn't an all season in any sport. When your sport was over, you were over. Okay, but our coach, wants you to do something, and so I ran track, and once again, I couldn't do hurdles, wasn't fast, so no high jump. So I developed into a distance runner. Well, the cross-country coach was also the distance coach on the track team. So he just comes up to me one day in the hallway. He was a teacher. And he said, hey, we got an opening Saturday. Would you want to run? And I was like, well, Coach Corsoto says, okay. That was my football coach. I said, I'd be glad. Well, I did that. And then one of the other boys who also did that, before you know it, we had 3 football players that would tag in as much as they could. Now, one of those football players was very good cross country, and he won a cross country scholarship to Penn State. Yeah, so it was good and bad, because you were great to have him on the team, but it was a hassle. You never could beat him in practice or anything else. Yeah. And but that's kind of, but it did give me that taste for cross country, and I've always loved it. I always appreciated it.
Yeah, small town Lagodi. When I talk to people, we kind of always the same thing. Rode our bicycles, went to the pool, played baseball, played basketball during the summer. Anything in West Virginia that was unique maybe to that state, or something maybe that you wouldn't necessarily find here in Indiana?
Well,
growing up having fun?
I don't know about uniqueness, but I know I spoke to you a couple of years back, and you and Lim were traveling through West Virginia. You probably quickly learned that West Virginia is very outdoor. I mean, there's a lot of woods, so most of the things that we did for entertainment, there wasn't 4-wheelers then, there were dirt bikes, but we did backpacking, fishing, hunting. We did a lot of stuff outdoors. Yeah.
You're still quite an outdoorsman, aren't you?
I am. I love the outdoors. I wish I could do it more than I do, but I love the outdoors.
What do you enjoy doing today in the outdoors?
Well, I am a hunter, but my roles changed. I used to be, I was the one always worried, but now I'm, I guess you would call it training. My grandson Jackson, who's a 7th grader, and my granddaughter Addie, who's also hunting, but she goes more with her dad, and so I'm trying to train him. They love the outdoors. It's my golf game, I guess you would say. I just get out there and relax. I do like to play golf, but I stink at it, so I'm better outdoors.
Yeah, I used to like to play golf, but I stunk at it, and I don't play anymore. Got through my tantrum and left the course. Yeah. So high school's over with. What's next? What's after high school?
Well, after high school, I just described to you the blue collar background, my grandfather, my father. So naturally, I never thought anything professionally or formally. So I was going to be a blue collar guy. And so I got in mine construction, and but I had got laid off from that, had a period, and I had a friend who said, "Hey, we got an opening over at the Soil Conservation Service. You'd like to fill that in?" And he said it was an engineer's aide. Well, I'm thinking engineering, right? Engineering degree and all that. I said, "Well, I'm not qualified." He said, "Well, you'll be qualified for this." And so literally what I did, there was 3 of us, the old rod and chain day of surveying. You've seen one surveyor go around Lagodi now with this disc. Well, we literally had to take a chain, and you measured and you shot on the rod, and you had to do the math, make sure it all matched over and over and over. So that was my job. I was hacking brush and doing that in West Virginia. So that's where I went. And but it was I enjoyed it too. It was outdoors, right? And so we got to do it.
So was there a college involved?
The only surge classes, we call them, that I've taken, because once again I was on a blue collar path, or I assumed, and even when I came out here, right, I left the Soil Conservation Service to go blue collar. It worked itself out. I got family, and but in between, which I know I'm getting ahead again.
That's all right.
This come. I believe in God's providence, and that means, God opens doors and closes doors. I was lay speaker. I worked at the coal mines, and on Sundays, churches I won't say all around, but many of the churches that knew me, they would call, and I'd go preach. But that was it, right? Hello, Jim Lilly, and I'd give a sermon and be gone. And there was a group of people here in Lagodi who were wanting to form a church, and they asked me if I would just stay put and help them until they found a pastor. Well, at 33 years, they've not found that pastor yet. Yeah, right here.
Was it this building?
No, sir. We started literally in...
33 years ago this week.
Yeah, we started in the living room of our home. And I know. There was 16 of us. And do you remember Johnny Lagle?
Yes.
And his carpet building?
Yeah.
Okay, we leased it for 3 years. Johnny had gotten sick and had to quit laying the carpet, and Johnny literally lived in the back but rented the front to us. And then in 1996, we came over to this building, and so this has been our location since. Yeah.
So did you grow up in the church? Were your parents?
Yeah. That's a long yes. Short answer, yes. My dad. Deacon in church. My mother, everything was the church, right? Yeah. And my father too, but my mother probably all her life. Mom, she just the Southern church lady, as you imagine. And but my parents raised me that way, so I had it. But I'm glad you mentioned that. But because of, I just kept having all these false starts, so to speak. And I just kind of made a mess of my young life. And so in Washington, Brad Turner, who I came with, was working a second shift, and I was working a third shift. So I knock on the door. It's a church in Washington, Grace Baptist Church in Washington. So they send some guys or invite me to church. You know how it is. You ask them some questions, and that's about it. Well, 2 weeks later, the pastor of that church came. So I don't know if it was really open up or to get rid of him, but I just told him about all these messes I made in my life. And I remember him saying, God can forgive you. And that forgiveness thing I really wanted. And so he shared how I could be forgiven, and he mentored me. And he's actually my mentor in ministry. He has since passed and is with the Lord. But that changed the way I live life. Before then, I didn't forgive anybody. If you offended me, then I'm done with you, or I get even. But there's no victory in that. If you really want to live at peace, it's this forgiveness thing, right? And so the Jimmy in West Virginia, who was violent, didn't care to hurt people, didn't care about that, he's gone. And the Jim really loves people and wants to forgive people and wants to be forgiven by people. And I met my wife at that church too. She is a Lagodi graduate, so.
What's her name?
Sheila Kirk was her name.
Sheila Kirk.
Yeah, she graduated from Lagodi. Matter of fact, I think she might have been the largest Lagodi graduating class. It was she graduated in like 75, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and
74 and 75 certainly were.
Okay, yeah, and she's definitely a lion, buddy. I mean, the first time that we ever went to a high school basketball game together here in Lagodi was actually at remember that everybody used to play at the Hatchet House?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay, and it was a sectional game, and I worked nights, so I finally had a night off, and you may remember this game, you probably do, you're really into the Lions, but Montgomery or Bar-Reeve was leading, and a young man missed a foul shot to ice the game, and Lagodi raced down and hit the goal. Well, next thing I know, my beautiful wife is on my neck and about throwing me down the Hatchet House.
Oh, this is a good thing? This is good? This is good? Yeah, this is good?
Yeah, she loves it. She listens to you guys on the radio.
Well, think about it. If indeed she did graduate in 75, and if not, she's yelling at the TV right now.
Yeah.
But you know what happened in 1975 around here, don't you?
I think that, yes. And she told me about that.
Yeah.
And
State runner-up.
Here you go. Mike Wagner was in her father's house listening to the game with him because her older brother and sister had went to the game, and Sheila was younger, and Mike was right down the road from them as a child. He was raised right down the road, and so he was friends with them, and he listened to the game at their house.
Well, in 75, hate to spoil this story,
Okay.
Mike was on the team.
Okay. Well, he did listen to a game.
Oh, I know.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, there were a lot of games, a lot of important games, and Mike would have been right there.
He used to hang out down at their house, friends with Sheila's brothers.
And of course, he won a state championship.
Yes.
All right, so you are married to Sheila Kirk.
Yep.
When did you get married?
We got married in '84, November 17. This will be our 40th year together.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you. And we was talking about that grace and forgiveness. She really has a lot of it. You know, 2 children, 5 grandchildren, and back to, we keep talking about West Virginia, and I appreciate that. Wherever you're raised, if you were for some reason transferred it out, Lagodi's going to be your home.
Yeah, right.
But I will end up, unless something that I don't foresee happening, end up finishing out in Lagodi. I will die in Martin County. And I have the family connection, and I'm probably ruining your questions by doing all this talking. I told you I got a bad report, and remember in school for talking too much.
It's your show.
Okay, well, thank you. But I do want to say something about Lagodi in a positive light. It's like any town, it has a few issues, but I have lived here 40 years, and I think I could count on one hand, like MERS, and I think all of those were domestic, which, still sad, but those, you know how that plays out. But it's a safe town. It's a friendly town. They have welcomed. I just can't believe we spoke. I'm going up with a radio broadcast, and Alan Williams asked me to call football games on a Razor. We got people in this town giving opportunities to us, and I get it. We got to make a car ride to go to Sam's, but at the same degree, things like that are.
You could just Uber, right?
That's right. But this town is so welcoming. And I'll give you an example. When we were in the Johnny Lagle Carpet Building as Faith Baptist Church, there was a couple issues came up with our parking as a church. We needed worked out, and so I called the mayor's office. I thought, we'll just try to get this straightened out. And Bill Parker was the mayor, and so I'm assuming, I'm from Beckley, right? So I'm assuming the mayor's secretary gets a hold of the mayor, they mail me a letter and tell me what to do, and that's about it. No, that day, Bill Parker called me, and he wanted to meet me, and so we got the situation straightened out within 2 hours. And I asked you, you're from Lagodi, so maybe you haven't processed this, but how many times can you get a hold of the mayor, and he meets you at Dairy Queen, work something out?
Well, what else are they going to do? No, I'm kidding. Maybe back then. Today it's a whole different story. But no, you're right. Small town life is small town life, and there's nothing like it.
It's great.
You have its concerns, like you said. It's hop, skip, and a jump from the interstate, but yet today it's a hop, skip, and a jump to the interstate. When you and I were growing up, here, it was more than that. So, we're more connected, I guess, to the outside world. But no, that's a great story. Faith Baptist Church, did you name it? Since it was in your living room, right?
Well, yes, but the naming process, those people, obviously the first few meetings, and to be honest with you, there were times I would be like, this is going to be just a little while. And, but there was a time where it became obvious. And then by now, obviously the first few meetings, you're meeting, calling yourself a church, but you're not legally a church, right? So when we came to filing the paperwork with the state and all that, well, it came obvious we didn't even have a name. And so they were, I have a card somewhere that would tell all the names, but there was like 4 names. You want to give everybody a shot. So you put the name of the church in, and so we had it, but people literally voted, and even the ones that nominated other names, it was unanimously chose Faith Baptist Church. So there was other names there, so somebody actually nominated a different name, but they chose.
Do you remember the original members, some of the original names?
Yeah, it wouldn't take me long to do it. Some of them are deceased. My father-in-law and mother-in-law were part of the original, and both of them are deceased and with the Lord. Jack and Bonnie Archer, Park Street.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And then my nephew, 2 nephews, Jamie Kirk and the fire chief Eric Thomas, they were there, and then Eric's parents, Patty and Buddy, and then of course Sheila and I and our 2 girls, Amber and Sarah, and then Ralph and Joy Osberg, because that name's probably familiar with you, and Josh and Lindsay.
Okay.
And then it was Bob and Barbara Deegan. Do you remember them?
Last name what?
Bob and Barbara Deegan.
I don't.
Bob was a New York City guy, Brooklyn, and had a heart, the biggest heart guy I ever met in my life, but he growled like a New Yorker. Everything was, but
no offense to you, New Yorkers.
no, they probably got some New Yorker just now turned it off. But yeah, I loved him. He was a great guy. He passed. Now Barbara's still in Fishers, but Bob. And the interesting thing about Bob is I love the Cleveland Browns. Got my dad. November 1, 1970, took me to a Browns game in the old Municipal Stadium. And if you know how it is as a kid, you walk in, you see the thing for the first time and eat that hot dog. And, smell all that stuff. I was back in smoking days, people
yeah.
smoking cigars around me and everything else. And so I got hooked. But Bob liked the Browns, and I thought, that's interesting. He was from Brooklyn. And but we would always talk Browns. And then when he died, there was a New York Giants jersey laying on the casket. And I was like, I told his son, what's up with this? Well, here's the thing. He had actually played for New York Giants, and they had cut him in a training camp, and the Browns were a big rival to him, so he started rooting for their rival, and that's how he became a Cleveland.
Okay.
But he had actually played for Giants and never had told me that. Never.
Yeah. So you said that when you had your service in your living room or at John Legal's, you had your wife, you had a couple kids, right?
Yeah.
Wait. I'm asking, how did you pay the bills?
Well, at that point,
We'll get to your family.
Yeah, at that point, I was still working.
Okay.
For the coal mines.
Okay.
I actually worked there for 11 years. So most of the early years, this was just, a matter of fact, I needed work. My first salary was $150 a month. So you had to work, right?
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned family, and you had your family, you married, and your children after you moved here.
Yeah.
So they're native Hoosiers, right?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. So tell me about your family.
Okay. Well, I have a daughter, Sarah, and she's now Sarah Loniger, and she actually works for Lagodi School, so works with your wife. And then I have my youngest daughter is Amber, and she married also Amber Knapp. They gave me 5 of the best children, as you know. Grandchildren are the best children. And but here's how it all played out. Sarah and Amber graduated from Lagodi, and Amber's children always were part of Lagodi because they live in Bramble, but Sarah and Derek and the children live in Odin. And I'm not sure how many years ago, but they transferred, so it ends up going to be my whole entire family, minus me, is going to be Lagodi graduates, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good to hear. So you've got the grandkids, as you said. There's nothing like them.
No.
And I'm just thinking, though, Jim, kind of back to hopping into this ministry.
Yep.
Obviously there's a major obligation there.
Yes.
You at one time, I'm sure, didn't feel worthy of this. But I'm guessing that your sermons to the people out there, a lot of it's experience that you might know these people might be going through the same thing. And here's how you can get to where you might want to be.
That's good, and I appreciate that lead in. Yeah, as far as the worthiness, obviously, each time, and it may surprise you, every time that I come here and I get up there to speak, there's that knot, right? There's that knot. Now it goes away.
Is there still?
It goes away very quickly.
Okay. All right.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
But I guess that would be odd if I didn't have it. It's sort of like anybody that's involved in athletics. I was telling the young people on the cross country, that knot in your gut. I said, how many? Some of them raised their hand and got it. I said, good, because I said I have it for Monday, right? Yeah. So that's a good thing. But for anybody that's listened to me, God, as Pastor Moody, quoting Pastor Moody, if there's something holding you back, you failed, or you're just not there, God can forgive you that, and He can restore you. And then you just start one person at a time, 1 week at a time. I never intended this to be 33 years. This actually was one Sunday on one Sunday for 33 years, right? I mean, you never... I guess somebody would, but who goes into something thinking, okay, 33 years later, I'll be here. But they're just a lot. Now, one thing that I would caution anybody, I even have to remind myself, I could be in a different church, a different group of people, and I may not have made it 33 months. It was just something about all of us, right?
A connection.
Yes, that's a good word for it, connection. I've always told them that I love anybody that comes through the door. Now, I've had a couple close calls, by the way, but it's because that's what everyone wants peace, right?
Right.
I mean, it's nice to have money, it's nice to have possessions, but deep down, what we all want is just to be at peace and just lay our head in a pillow and not sit there and 2 hours later wonder if your sleep's coming. Now, Jesus forgiving us our sins gives us the spiritual peace, and then, if there's I had to ask some people to forgive me. I did, and I had to be willing. Grace is the way, and if you will show people grace, I promise you, and I'm sure you've already experienced this. We were doing our mic set, and we're the same age, pretty close. So I'm sure your life's been similar. And if you'll show people grace, you're going to find out at some point you're going to have to go. I've had to go to my daughters and ask for grace, right? So I'm glad that somewhere along the course I gave them grace. I'm not saying they wouldn't have gave me grace anyways, but it's just a pattern. I don't know. Is that past the answer? Is that a good answer?
No. So any other profession, the question might be, how much longer are you going to do this? But this is until you can't, right?
That's a good question. I even asked myself. I'm like any other human being, right? You
like to have more time to your family.
Yeah. And I'm sure. Now I have, because of my parents' health condition, I've been on that side, and I recognize how quickly that comes, how fast. To give you an example, and my father will listen to this, and he would agree with me. My mother was like a rock solid tank. I mean, if I was mowing, she'd get beside me, pick up, and just never ever had a hiccup. And my father, injuries, coma, this, that, and so my dad. 3 months ago, he looks at me and he goes, "I never thought I'd outlive your mother." And I said, "I don't want you to take this from. I didn't either, right?" But
you never know.
Yeah, exactly. You're on it. You experienced the same thing. You lost a mother, cancer,
exactly.
And so, with that backdrop, all of us need to, have departments for our life and think about it. At some point, I probably want to slow down, just like anybody else, and spend more time. My wife's been very gracious. She's had to give up a lot, as you imagine. But she's been rock solid. I can honestly say I wouldn't be able to be here as long as, and there's so much responsibility this now. The children are gone, so we can't use that as an excuse now. But when the children were home, Miss Sheila, my girls, she did a great job. I tried every time I could. I was working nights, trying to get going here, going there, trying to get people hospital visits. So I'm very thankful for my wife and what she's done.
Yeah, a time or two, Pastor has talked about in radio. Well, most of you know he has his own radio show, right? I mean, on Sunday mornings, WRZR. Right? And he also did football for North Davies High School at WRZR. Yeah. But he was also my broadcast partner at a time or two, whatever sport, softball, basketball, you name it. And I remember, I don't even know how you were thrown in there, but I just remember you were my broadcast partner one day. I didn't know you from anybody. And, we just got to talking, and it was a great connection, I thought. Well, you were very personal, and I could have talked to you all night. I'm guessing there was a game that went on that night, but, we did what we could. But you enjoy that, though, don't you?
I do. I appreciate that. Yeah. Alan Williams, who, I realize now, I don't even know what his title is now, but then when Larry Hembry owned it, he was the station manager. So my interview process was like, "Didn't you play football in high school?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Mark Smith needs somebody to help you tonight." Right. That's Alan, right? And so next thing I know,
there was an actual interview.
That was my job interview. Okay. And so I went up. He talked a little more in detail, but the equipment that you go with now, you were somewhere family responsibility last basketball season. I did a game with Alan. Well, everything's sitting here. Yeah. Well, we used to have to carry bags and phone cords and. Well,
the bags are still there, believe me.
Yeah.
But it's a lot different than it was a few years ago for sure. But I guess it's been a while though since you've been in the broadcast booth.
It has. I fill in for you that time.
That's right, just a year ago.
Okay. But now, as far as a full-time basis, yes. Yeah. I enjoy that, as you imagine. I love high school sports. I love the kids, and you just like to get them. You know how it is. You get you get there and you get pulled in. Before you know it, you're into the game. Now, for basketball, you know the whole game, what they look like face-wise. Well, what always got me is Scott Helms, North Daviess Cougar coach, would send the young men up after the interview. Well, they take their helmets off, and I want to you don't need to be playing football. You're going to get hurt, kid, right? Because I just had seen them down there, big, broad shoulders, tackling. They take their helmet off. They're 15, 16.
Right. Yeah,
and you're like, no, don't do that.
Yeah. What's your form now? We covered a lot, but what did we not cover? And I always tell people, you've heard this, when you leave, I'll say, well, I wish I would have asked him that, or you'll say, I wish I would have mentioned that. But that's okay. But what would be a parting message, anything you want to talk about?
Oh, wow.
It's your form.
Yeah, well, I'm sure even with the parting message, I do the same thing. There's never a Sunday that I don't go home, sit in that easy chair, which I always do, by the way, after, and I don't say, oh, I should have said that, or I should have said this. And now there's no denying anything. Facebook, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Back when I started, you could say, well, no, I didn't really say it that way.
That's right. You could go to his Facebook page, and you can get all of his sermons right there. Yeah.
Yeah, and not only that, but the tech people, they put the words. So we got my face and the words, so there's no denying anything. Well, the only thing is, like say, you're talking about, and I'd like to talk to that person who feels, I actually, when I came to Indiana, I won't say hopeless, but I really was confused about life. And, if you just give, a lot of people say I came here because, for Sheila, or I came here for ministry. I had neither. I had neither when I came here. And it was when I had my loneliness, which I did, because my friend was on a different shift, and I was sitting in a trailer at the Southview Trailer Court in Washington. No criticism to them. I mean, that's just the setting. And looking out, and it was spitting snow. And I was like, how have I let my life get here?
How old at the time?
I was 23.
23.
Yeah, 23. Okay. So I was old enough that I knew I needed direction. But
and young enough to be able to get it.
Yes, you're on it. I needed direction, and everywhere I looked for it, I did it just like everybody else. I had a ladder against the wall professionally, and I was climbing it, but I found out later it was on the wrong wall. So everything that I wanted to do, I could do it. And if you looked at me, I would be laughing. Matter of fact, probably what triggered my change in life, I was with a guy one time, and he goes, you laugh all the time. He said, I would love to be happy like you. Well, I was dying inside. I was dying inside. So I knew that I was tired of being fake. I knew that it was time. And so that's where I want to share with, and I know I'm a pastor, but that's where Jesus, through, I repented of all that error, and Jesus forgave me. And slowly, it wasn't the next day, and it was months later before I met Sheila. And it was years later before I got involved in the church. But it was like crawling out. And now I can tell you that when I don't do a good job closing. You can ask the people here. I always tell them in closing, and they'll close their Bibles. The visitors close their Bible, and that are my regulars. They just sit there. They're waiting. But my father, hard worker, blue collar, woke up 2:30 in the morning, worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, 31 years, accumulated a farm, nice things. Over the process, when I brought him to Indiana, the only thing my dad had, because we had to liquidate so much, was in the back of my pickup and in a 4x8 U-Haul. And I was coming up through Kentucky, and I told my wife, I said, Dad has worked all his life, and this is it. So accumulating is nice. We got to enjoy some of those things. But my dad's at peace, and my dad will tell you, he tells me all the time that he's a happy person. He's got a good life. He's had a stroke, lost his wife, all these other things, but he's found it, right? He's found the peace. And so if I could talk to you or anybody, just find that peace with Jesus, and then the rest of it, it'll all fall in place. The rest of it's a bonus, really.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, you're born with material. You're not born with material things, and
you don't take
when
it.
you go out of this world, you're not taking material things. And
No.
unfortunately, he's still in this world, but he doesn't need what he once needed, right?
No, he does not. And
or what he thought he needed.
no, he did. But he's got good friends.
Yeah.
Wonderful care at Parkview, good friends, good food, laugh, and Dad's a blessed man.
So you're a junior, James Lilly Jr.?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
I just put that together. Did you see how I did that?
You did well. That's reading your media. You did. That could, it's a blessing, but yet I know I keep hijacking your story. One time, my father was a coal miner, hard worker, right? And I was just this bumbling kid. Well, that's back in the old system, and we were at the same bank. So my dad gets a notice, his bank account's down. Well, I'm a bubba, I'm not even paying attention to my bank account. Well, guess what? Dad's check went with me, and mine went with him. And he found out real quick that he was making a lot more money than me, right?
Oh, so he knew, yeah. Jim Lilly.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
God
the good
bless.
pastor, Jim Lilly.
Thank you,
Every
sir.
chance I get, I call him that. But certainly somebody that we wanted to talk to, and I know he's got a lot of people out there watching right now that were anxious to watch it. And there's much more to his story, but hopefully we got to know a little bit more about the good pastor.
Yeah.
We thank you for watching this edition of Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor.